Man, if you have not been here the last few weeks, I want to tell you about some incredible things that we've been a part of, that we launched with this series called 33 AD. And it's been so beautiful as Pastor Irwin has been guiding us through this conversation around the person of Jesus. And for the first few weeks, we've been talking about the origin story of Jesus, but today we're going to continue and talk about the beauty and wonder, the legend of who Jesus is. And I've loved this series as we've dived into it because for us, everything that we do, everything that matters to us, what has brought us life as a community has always been rooted in the person of Jesus. And as we dive into John chapter 6 today, I just am so excited as we see the powerful current of what happens when you not just talk about the person of Jesus, but you begin to exemplify some of the most beautiful characteristics of what made him so human. And in John chapter 6, there's this moment in Jesus' life and this miracle that was all about the signs that they were looking for. And there was a crowd that when Jesus moved from city to city and village to village, they kept noticing that he was a sign of life, and he was pointing them to different things. And this has always been the story between God and us, is that we've been looking for the signs of life, and a lot of times we've been looking outside of there, not realizing that there's a life that's waiting to be unleashed inside of all of us. And one of my favorite things that I love to do right now with just every day is I get to drive my kids to school. And we have our oldest, Isaiah, who's in second grade, our youngest, or second oldest, Indigo, is in kindergarten. And it is the highlight of my week. I get to just be in a car for 20 minutes with my boys, or 50 minutes if traffic is really bad that day. And it's just our time together. And I get to ask them questions about their life, and they get to ask me questions. And it's always been my favorite time, but it's recently been interrupted by some frustrating things. Because as they get older, they're learning how to read. And what I've noticed recently is that in our conversations, I'll ask them a question, and in the middle of them answering, they'll just go, "Oh, Ant-Man and the Wasp, coming out next week, Dad." It's like, cool. We were talking about like really faith and hope, and I don't care about Ant-Man right now. And then we'll be talking, and go, "Oh, Black Adam. Black Adam comes out next month. Can't wait to see it. Bat Wheels." And they're just Hogwarts. All these billboards, they're just reading. I was like, you are Hollywood kids, where you're just reading billboards on your way to school. And it's been so interesting because our conversations have shifted because they're noticing all the signs. See, the signs were always there. Right? The billboards have always been there, but they couldn't read, and so they never noticed them. And now, all of a sudden, they're seeing the signs all around, and I wonder when it comes to how we relate to God, it's not that he showed up in a new way in our lives, but we finally were able to see all the signs. See, the story of humanity and God has been God trying to get our attention. It's been him pointing different things that were always to point back to himself. And the story of Jesus, the story of God himself stepping into human history, was so that there could be one final sign that would always point us to life. And in John chapter 6, we have this incredible moment in the life of Jesus. We're starting in verse 1. It says this: "Sometime after this, Jesus crossed to the far shore of the Sea of Galilee, that is the Sea of Tiberias, and a great crowd of people followed him because they saw the signs he had performed by healing the sick. Then Jesus went up to a mountainside and sat down with his disciples. The Jewish Passover was near. And when Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming toward him, he said to Phillip, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" He asked this only to test him, for he had already had in mind what he was going to do. Philip answered him, "It would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have a bite." Another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. "Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will they go among so many?" And Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." There was plenty of grass in that place, and they sat down. About 5,000 men were there. And Jesus took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. And when they had all had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, "Gather the pieces that are left over. Let nothing be wasted." So they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces of the 5 barley loaves left over by those who had eaten. And after the people saw the sign Jesus performed, they began to say, "Surely this is the prophet who is to come into the world." Jesus, knowing that they intended to come and make him king by force, withdrew again to a mountain by himself. This is such a deep passage. There are so many layers to what happens in this moment in the life of Jesus and these 5,000 who would come. But before we can talk about what would happen and the miracle of Jesus feeding all of these people, we need to first understand the context of what's happening in the life of Jesus. See, every city that he goes to, every village that he steps into, it's as if the Beatles have come. It's as if Coldplay, Rihanna, whoever, name your favorite artist. It's as if they came into the town and there's just a flock. There's a crowd. There's an army of people who would come to witness or to experience the person of Jesus and the miracles and the signs and the wonders. And every time Jesus would come into a village, he would always leave that place better than he found it. And here in this moment, it's Jesus, after doing all these miracles and after these signs, him seemingly wanting to have a moment with his friends, to have a moment of isolation. But even God himself can't seem to get out of the human story. And there's something that's really fascinating about the person of Jesus, that he can be an extrovert and an introvert. He can be both full of energy and need time alone. And I love that we have a human moment at the end when it says that they wanted to make him king by force. And it says that he went to a mountain by himself. Jesus, I feel you on that. People are exhausting. But I love that we get insight into the humanity of God. We talk so much about the divinity of God. It's so important. But in the person of Jesus, we need to have a conversation about the humanity of God. So when Jesus steps into the story, he's trying to shake us up. And here, this begins with a conversation that Jesus has with Phillip that I think he has with a lot of us. In verse 5, it says, when Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" He asked this only to test him, for he had already had in mind what he was going to do. Cheeky Jesus. Philip answered him, "It would take more than a half year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have a bite." See, here in this moment, the first thing that happens that's essential that we have to notice is that it says as the crowd was coming, very intentionally, it says that Jesus looked up. It says that he looked up and all of a sudden he sees a crowd coming towards him. And this is so important because there's things in our lives that Jesus is trying to get our attention on. There's things that he wants to shake inside of us. But here's what I know to be true, that if Jesus can change what you care about, he can change what you see. See, the two things are connected. That the moment you have the heart of God, it's crazy how often you have the eyes of God. that you're then able to see what he sees. See, Jesus looked up. He sees the crowd coming. And then he asks a rhetorical question, where shall we buy bread for all these people to eat? And then Phillip, who's right there, is trying to navigate, what is Jesus asking of me? What is it that I should do? And then the scriptures say that Jesus said this only to test him, for he already knew what he was going to do. You ever feel like God's testing you? You ever feel like just so many things about your life is that I feel like God's testing me. I feel like God's trying to mess with me. Everything's a test. You ever feel like that? I know I do. You want to know something? It is. Like, damn, why does it feel like Jesus is always testing me? He is. But he may not be testing you in the way that you think. See, what is it about a test? What's the purpose of a test? A test is about information. It's about results. It's about data. See, a test reveals. When you get that F, I'm not speaking on personal behalf, but when you get that F, you cannot blame the teacher for not giving you the information. So you got the F because you did not prepare for when the moment would require the information. And I think a lot of us are living a life that we do not want or long for, and we think it's because God didn't give us the information. It's that we did not have the courage to apply the information. 3 people clap is fine. And I think some of you are here and you feel like God's like testing you to catch you. You ever felt like that? Where God's just trying to catch me doing bad. Or he's trying to catch me in the wrong. Or I can't share that with God because that's what he does. He just wants to hoard it over me that, look, you messed up again, but I need you to hear me in this. Like, Jesus does not test us to catch us. No, he tests us to change us. See, he tests us so he can graduate us. See, he tests us so that he can mature us. See, the testing of our faith will produce the fruit that will bring life into the world. But you cannot step into it if you're first not willing to administer the test. See, when Jesus has this moment with the disciples, when he's trying to get them to change what they see, he's trying to instill in them a compassion and an empathy that feels foreign to them. And he said, I need to change what you care about, because when I change what you care about, it's crazy how you'll see all the opportunities around you of what I can do through you. But you have to change what you see, and the way you change what you see is you change what you care about. And Jesus looked up and he saw this crowd, and all of a sudden Phillip and Andrew and all of Jesus' friends have to come to grips with the reality that they've been walking with Jesus but have been blind to his movement. And Jesus is trying to shake them at their core. I remember my come to Jesus moment when I was in my 20s. I had a moment when I was like a kid where I believed in Jesus, but then it's like, then you do some things. You know what I'm talking about? Right? You're like, I believe in Jesus, but I also believe in some things. You know what I mean, right? So it was after me doing some things, that phase of my life, and I had this return to Jesus, and I had this moment where not only did I see how beautiful and magnetic and life-giving it was to be connected with the person of Jesus, but I decided I'm all in, no turning back. And there was a season of my life where I just began uprooting all the destructive patterns and choices and trying to create new rhythms in my life. And I just was going to church every week. And I remember this one particular Sunday, I would go to this church and I would listen to the pastor speak and I would take notes, and I was so present and engaged. And this one particular week, I just saw things that I'd never seen before. And as I'm sitting there and as he's speaking, I just looked around and I saw like a teenager sitting here. And then I saw a middle school kid here, and I saw another teenage girl there, and I just started noticing all these kids, 15, 20 different kids, and they're all disengaged, some of you right now. And they were all like questioning and full of doubts and like, what is this guy talking about? And I just had seen them for the first time. And I heard this voice inside of my soul, as clear as day, say, do you see that? And I was in this space where I was trying to identify the voice of God and have the courage to act whenever I saw it. And so I felt like God was speaking to me and said, do you see this? And I responded in my soul, in my spirit. I said, yes, I see it. And then I heard this voice immediately after say, what are you going to do about it? And then it felt like we were in a conversation. And so I said, nothing. Because I knew what he was asking. And I said, nothing. I'm not doing anything. I just wanted you to know, God, I see it. And you can do something about it. And I just felt like this voice inside of my soul, so clear, so clear, so clear. I say, see, I have no way to shift who you are when I let you see something and you act like you don't see it. God does not hold it over our heads when we are unaware of what's happening around us. But the moment he lets us see it, there's an expectation that we will then do something about it. Because here's the thing, if God lets you see it, it meant he gave you what you need to solve it. And I think it's time for us just to be honest about the fact that there's a whole lot going on in our lives that we're acting like we're blind to. But the blindness wasn't because God didn't want us to see it. It's because we didn't have the courage to actually do something about it. And I think God is sick and tired of being the only one that cares about the things that we're supposed to care about. See, I think there's so many people walking around this earth, walking around this city, friends of ours, family of ours, that are wondering if God cares, if God is indifferent to them. And it's not that God didn't care, it's that we chose not to care. It's that we chose to cover our eyes and act like we're simple observers in the situation, that we have no skin in the game. And I wonder for you, what is the very thing that you know God lets you see? That you know that he put it in your peripheral. And it may terrify you and it may overwhelm you, but the reality is you saw it. And the question then becomes, will you trust that God will meet you in it and give you exactly what you need? See, when Jesus tests Phillip, he was trying to help Phillip see the vacuum of compassion in his life. But I love at the end where it says, Philip answered him, it would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have a bite. See, here's the thing, that statement is true. It would have taken half a year's wages. And Philip was basically like, hey, Jesus, yo, I ain't got that. He's like, hey, the way my bank account looks right now, my Venmo is a little rough. I ain't got that. Because all he sees is the facts. See, all he sees is the obstacle. It would take half a year's wages. What he doesn't realize is that the facts mean nothing when you're in the person of Jesus. See, he doesn't care about facts. He cares about the heart. He cares about the future, the endless possibilities of what he can do. And then Philip says this would take half a year's wages for even one to have a bite. And then I love this next moment. In verse 8, it says, another one of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. And he says, here's a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. How far will they go among so many? This is so important because it says that first, before what would happen next, before the miracle of Jesus blowing our minds and in this situation of feeding 5,000 people with just 5 loaves and 2 fish, it says that Andrew spoke up. See, in order for something to change, there's got to be somebody willing to have the courage to speak up. There's got to be someone who identifies what's happening, and when everyone else is silent, I'm going to say something. See, I think we're just far too callous. We're far too cool. This city is so dang cool. And we care so much of being cool and how people think about us and how people see us. But who cares about being cool? It's about having an impact in the world. It's about caring about other people more than you do about yourself. It's about realizing that God put something inside of you that was not for you to hoard, but it was for you to unleash. And I think we have to wake up. We've got to realize that life is too dang important. Life is too fragile. Life is too fleeting for us not to tap into the heart of God, to see the things that have been breaking his heart since the beginning of our story. See, there's this moment where Andrew was like, I don't know what to do, but I got to do something. And he speaks up. And then he says, here's a boy. And we don't really talk about this because we know how the story ends. But Andrew jacked this little boy's lunch. He stole a 5-year-old's lunch. It's like, this kid came, heard Jesus, brought a lunch. He's like, I'm going to grub today. Andrew's like, nah, that's mine. But see what happened here in this moment, Andrew could have just threw his hands up and said, there's no way I could feed 5,000 people with just 5 loaves and 2 fish. But he didn't focus on what he didn't have. He focused on what he did have. So I wonder for you, if the lack that you feel in your life isn't because God already hasn't given you enough, but it's because you're waiting for him to give you more. If we're going to clap, let's clap. See, he brought what he had. He said, all I have is 5 loaves and 2 fish. I don't have any more than this. I don't even know what this could do. And he was like, all right, this is what I got. See, I think God's waiting for you just to put in his hands what you already got. What he's made available to you, what is around you. Because God will never put a dream inside of you or an ambition inside of you, a future inside of you that you long for and then not give you the resources to accomplish it. Because if he did that, if God blew your mind and your imagination with something that you wanted to do and then hoarded the resources to accomplish it, he would be a cruel God. But he's not. The reality is that it could be that he's just waiting for you to give him what you already got and then watch how he multiplies what he already gave you. See, Andrew just said, this is what I got, Jesus. And even in his language, he didn't even know. Because he says, it's 5, and he says, small little loaves, just so you know, Jesus, and 2 small little fish. That's all I got. But I think so many of us, we stop there. And rather than even bring to the table the little that we have, we stand with the little and we give nothing. And Jesus is just waiting for us to have the courage to bring to him. It's crazy what God can do with a bad idea. Like Andrew had a bad idea. 5,000 people, that's just the men. That's not including the women and the children. Bad idea. 5 fish, 2 loaves. Jesus could have laughed at him being like, bro, definitely not enough. Good try. But see, Jesus can work with a bad idea. What he can't work with is apathy. See, Jesus can work with limited resources. What he cannot work with is a hoarding spirit. And see, I look at the world's problems, and there's so many of them right now. See, I look at all of the conflicts happening, not just in the world out there, but in the world in here. And I look at every single one of them, and I could act as if these are problems that either God caused or he doesn't care about. But that's not real, that's not true, and that's not the issue. The issue is not that God does not care. It's that the ones who he created to be his hands and feet do not yet have his heart. And if you do not have his heart, you will never have his hands and his feet. And he's trying to disrupt our soul. He's trying to shake us up, to say, open your eyes. Look all around you and see how I have positioned you to bring the life that I have put inside of you. And Andrew just brings what he has. And it's in him bringing that little seed of faith is where the miracle of life would be born. And then verse 10, it says, Jesus said, have all the people sit down. There was plenty of grass in that place, and they sat down. About 5,000 men were there. Jesus then took the loaves, he gave thanks, and he distributed to those who were seated. I love this part, as much as they wanted. See, here's the reality. God will always move in your life as much as you want. If you only want him to move a little, he'll move a little. If you're hungry and desperate for him to move in ways that you can't even imagine, he will blow your mind about how active he is. Because God will always move at your and I's pace. He will never force himself on us. He will never make us be hungrier or more desperate than he is. He will woo us with his love, and he will wait to see how much we want. Distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. And when they all had had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, gather the pieces that are left over. Let nothing be wasted. So they gathered them, and they filled 12 baskets with the pieces of the 5 barley loaves left over by those who had eaten. That's wild. Sometimes you read the Bible and you're just like, oh yeah, it's in there. Oh yeah, that happened. But think about what was happening in that field. Just put yourself amongst the crowd where you just sense a hunger and a desperation. You just sense this powerful spirit of people questioning and wondering, but also so ready for whatever God had for them. And you watch Jesus take these 5 loaves and these 2 fish, and it says that after everyone had had as much as they wanted, after everyone had had their fill, it says they have 12 baskets that they fill with extra. Because I don't know who needs to hear this today, but God is the God of extra. So you may think that you bring only a little of yourself to him, or you bring the last pieces of yourself to him. And what he wants you to know is there's an extra that I have for you. There's an overflow, there's an abundance. But I just need you to change your mindset. I need you to change your perspective. I need you to change what you see. Last week, Beck and I, we had some friends over for dinner, and I love hosting people in our home. I love to cook. Like, I could eat by myself or with our family, and we could do Chick-fil-A, which we do way too much. Pray for us. We could do McDonald's, we could do pizza. But there's something about you taking the time to prepare for someone. There's something about you getting the house ready and cleaning and vacuuming those places you never vacuumed before. Because when people are coming into your house that you care about, you act differently. And I was really excited to hang with this couple, and there's a favorite dish of mine that I make that my wife loves. It's this Moroccan chicken. And it's because I studied abroad in Morocco, and I got to go into these villages where like local chefs taught me how to make Moroccan food. I'm kidding, I'm lying. I've never been to Morocco. I Googled a recipe and our family loves it. And so we have this go-to dish anytime we have friends over. And so I'm making this Moroccan chicken and getting the spice rub ready. And I'm so excited for them to eat it. And that's the biggest thing, right? You want to watch them as they're eating it. Do they like it? Is it worth it? And so I'm serving all the dishes, and I go and I give our friends their dish, and I get my wife her dish. And before that moment, I went to the store and bought all the ingredients, but if I'm being fully honest, I could have bought a lot more ingredients and we could have had a lot left over, but I was like, look, the Smiths are on a budget right now. We got to keep things tight and I don't want to waste. I don't want to be full. So I didn't buy as much as I could have, but I'm like, we're going to be okay. Then when I serve my friends a plate and then they start eating and I go and I get mine, I go and sit down. And by the time I sit down, my friend Alex has already eaten his entire dish. And I was like, oh no, Alex is going to want more. And I sat down, and then our friend Rachel, she ate her dish, and then my wife ate hers, and I was like, okay, what do I do? There's not enough. I can't be that guy that runs out. You can't be the guy that runs out of food at a dinner party. So I just asked. I asked, but I didn't really want the answer. I said, Alex, do you want seconds? And he was like, yeah. Took his bowl, went over to the pot, and I just looked at it. And I felt like I prayed, had like a Jesus in the 5,000, Jesus, can you give me more? And I just waited, like I was hoping it would rise up. Didn't. So I had to take my bowl, and without them knowing, I gave some of my food to Alex so he could have seconds. And then I give him his plate, and I go, Rachel, would you like seconds? She's like, I would love seconds. Yeah. So I go back and fill her plate and bowl. And then I have to feed myself. So I get a little bit, I got like 4 grains of rice and half a, little chunk of potato. And then I'm at the pot just going, Jesus, I'm an idiot. You ever thought that? Just like, you're not mad at God, you're mad at yourself. You just declare, Jesus, I'm an idiot. And I'm scraping the bottom of this pot, being like, I'm gonna get every ounce of Moroccan chicken out of this. See, I think a lot of us live our lives this way, where we're scraping the bottom of the pot, trying to get to the crumbs, trying to get the little bits, trying to get every little thing that we can, not because Jesus didn't want more for us, but because we actually settled for less. See, there's an abundance. There's an extra. There's a basket full life waiting for you, I promise. But you have to change your mindset. You have to believe that God is not a God of scarcity, but he is a God of more. That everything that he does is to position us so that we can receive the very beauty and wonder that he has for us. See, at the end of chapter 6, Jesus goes and this crazy moment where he walks on water in the midst of this storm. And we don't have time to get into it, but you can read that on your own. And he's going again to another place, and a crowd finds him again. And it's here in this moment at the end of chapter 6 where we have some of the most beautiful words that have ever come out of the mouth of Jesus. And in verse 30, it says, "So they asked him, 'What sign then will you give that we may see it and believe you? What will you do? Our ancestors ate the manna in the wilderness. As it is written, he gave them bread from heaven to eat.' And Jesus said to them, 'Very truly I tell you, it is not Moses who has given you the bread from heaven, but it is the Father who gives you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is the bread that comes down from heaven and gives life to the world.' 'Sir,' they said, 'always give us this bread.' And then Jesus declared, 'I am the bread of life.'" I have a friend who's a baker, and I love bread. It's my weak spot. You can see in the dad bod, it's where it goes. Yep. And I said, I'm talking about Jesus feeding the 5,000 with 5 loaves, and then him declaring to us that he is the bread of life. And I could go to the store and buy a loaf of bread, but you made the best bread that I've ever had in my entire life. And I think there's people that need to know that God will always give us his best. And in this moment, Jesus has so much compassion and so much love. And he's trying to help them connect the dots and see that he's been a part of the story since the beginning. He says, in the same way that your ancestors knew that manna from heaven would come, the same way that when you were in the wilderness and hungry and desperate, God made a promise to you that he would provide for you every day and he would give you this manna. And they said, this manna from heaven. He said, the same way that you know that story, here's the ultimate story. It was never about the manna. It was always about me. And that manna wasn't the only thing that came from heaven, but I came from heaven. And I am the bread of life. That I am what your soul desperately longs for. I am the sustenance that will keep you coming back for more. That I am the bread of life. And I recently heard a story about this region in Egypt. And it's this village outside of this cave. And what will happen is there'll be a truck that will come with loaves and loaves of bread. And as hundreds of people come around, they just toss the bread into the crowd. And then the crowd throws money into the truck. And there's this exchange, it's chaotic. But it's beautiful that there's just bread being thrown around. And what's even more beautiful is in this region of Egypt, the Arabic word for bread literally translates to life. The same word that's used for bread is the same word that's used for life. Because when Jesus, thousands of years earlier, said, I am the bread of life. And I know there's someone in here today that you're desperate for the bread of life. You're desperate for God to do what only he can do. You're desperate for Jesus to be who he said he was. And you're like LJ 7 years ago. Completely a mess. Well, you were a mess, bro, but we loved you anyway. Completely full of doubts, questions, fears, anxiety, worry. But you're also like LJ in that you're open. Like, God, if you're out there, I'm open. And in the same way, when Andrew spoke up, sometimes you need one that's willing to go first. And so if there's anyone here, we've never done this before. Pastor Owen, I love you. I hope this is okay. But if there's anyone here that you're searching for God, you're searching for life, you're desperate to find the hope that is found in Jesus, and you actually are open to the possibility that he is the bread of life, that he longs to bring you to life, then what I want you to do is I just want you to come up here and I want you to grab the life that has been waiting for you. If there's anyone. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Oh, see, you're too late. See, I see people came there, but stay. No, you're not too late. You're never too late with God. Because we came prepared. Can you go grab some more? We got more over there. See, with God, there's always overflow. There's always extra. And in a second, we're going to pray because I don't have 5,000 loaves like Jesus. I'm sorry. I don't even have like 400 for this room. But the bread is a metaphor, right? The bread is the symbol. The bread is the reminder. And so what I want us to do, I want us all to bow our heads and close our eyes. Yes. I may not have another loaf for you, but what I know is that God has another life for you. And if you're here and you're ready to receive the life that is found in Jesus, you're ready to open up your soul to him, to let the God of the universe who loves you and is for you, if you're ready to trust Jesus with your life, then all you got to do is say this simple prayer. Say, Jesus, I give you my life. That's it. Jesus, I give you my life. And when you utter those words, you begin a conversation where God wraps you in his love, where he heals the wounds of your past, where he takes all of your fears and your anxiety and all your worry and all your doubts and all your questions. And he may not answer all of them, but what he gives you is new purpose. What he gives you is forgiveness. What he gives you is joy and celebration and hope. What he gives you is life. Jesus, I give you my life. If you're here and you prayed that prayer, you stood up in your soul and said, God, I'm going to give you all that I have. Then what I want you to do right now, as quickly as you can, without overthinking it, I want you to raise your hand. Say, Jesus, I'm ready for your bread of life. Beautiful. Raise it high. I want to see you. Beautiful. Come on. Beautiful. Beautiful. Loaves all over the room. Come on. Anyone else? Jesus, I give you my life. I need you. I'm desperate for you. I've tried it all, but if you are who you say you are, I'm open. Beautiful. Father, I pray for every single hand that's held high. I pray right now you would overwhelm them with your presence. I pray that they would know that they matter more to you than anything in this world. I pray, Jesus, when they step out of this space, they would step into the newness that you have created inside of them. And when they walk out into this city, there would be a light that has been turned on that would expel every ounce of darkness. Jesus, we love you. We thank you that you always see us, even when we do not see ourselves. And we ask all this in your name. Amen and amen. Hey, Mosaic, can we thank God for every decision that was made today? Beautiful. Man, I want to encourage you before you go. Pastor Carlos is going to come, and if we could all just give him 2 minutes of our time before we leave. The Super Bowl doesn't start till 3:30, so you're good, all right? What I want us to do is, has this series not been incredible as we've been diving into who Jesus is? What I want us to do is I want us to be an inviting culture. Let's be the ones that do not hoard the beauty that we find in this room to ourselves. And let's invite. Like, this is such a great opportunity to bring friends and neighbors and coworkers, to invite people to be a part of this series all wrapped around the person of Jesus. And what I want us to do is to open up our lives to the people who need the life that we found. See, the reason I love this moment and this conversation about God being the bread of life is, I wish I had bread for everyone. There's so many hands, I didn't have enough bread. But here's what I want us to shift. We should not be the ones that simply need to consume the bread. Let's be the ones that create the bread. Let's be the ones that open up our homes, that we're the chefs, that we take the risk, that we bring people into the story of our lives. Because here's the reality, is that there is one thing that matters most to God, and that's you. See, the thing that is most important to God is you and I. And when there's other voices that try to tell you something differently, here's what I want you to declare over yourself over and over and over again. You are his why. See, you are the reason that Jesus came. And the moment you forget, the moment you doubt it, declare that over yourself. I am his why. Mosaic, we're just getting started. Let's run into the rest of this year, consumed by the person of Jesus, overwhelmed by his presence, changed forever by his life. And let's be the ones that when no one else will speak up, will remind people, you are his why. Love you guys.